Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's guest is Lois Weinblatt, a vision coach. If you're wondering what a vision coach is, so was I. And I think that once you dive into this episode, you'll wonder how you never thought to seek out vision coaching for yourself before. Lois is a visioning facilitator, speaker, and the founder of coaching and training company True North Visionaries, where she's had the opportunity to work with leaders in North America, Europe, Australia, and Asia. And these visionaries span industries and backgrounds, but they all have one thing in common. They want to be proactive and intentional about creating their life instead of allowing their life to happen to them. If that sounds as freaking compelling to you as it did to us, keep on listening. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. And by the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can always be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Our show is proudly brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute, now an accredited educational provider with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. This means that our graduates can become eligible to sit for the NBHWC credentialing exam to become a board-certified health and wellness coach. Stay tuned to the very end of the show where my co-host Laura will share the epic tale of what encouraged PHCI to take on the arduous journey of meeting these educational requirements for board certification. Long story short, we feel it's every coach's responsibility to shore up our level of coaching mastery so that our clients can truly transform and so our industry can be even more totally legitimized in the healthcare field. Check out primalhealthcoach.com/level2 to learn about our new advanced coaching course that will nudge you out of your comfort zone and launch you into coaching mastery. Laura will share a little bit more about what we teach and how at the end of today's episode. And with that little bit of foreshadowing out of the way, let's get on with the show and welcome today's guest, Lois Weinblatt. All right, welcome to the show, Lois. It's wicked to have you. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing amazing. So glad to be here.
Good. Well, we're excited to have you here too. You're a coach that works in kind of an interesting coaching realm, which we'll get into a lot throughout this conversation. But can you do us a big favor and tell us your origin story? We'd love to hear the 3 to 5 minute sort of speaker bio of who you are, but how you got here.
Absolutely. So my journey with visioning actually started at a deli, a corner deli based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I hope some listeners out there are fellow Midwesterners who can relate. So I grew up in Ann Arbor, and Zingerman's, this corner deli was like an institution. So like kids, grow up and like, I want to be an astronaut. And I was like, I want to work at Zingerman's. And I just knew growing up, like you don't know what company culture is. You don't know that's the thing, but I knew that it was a really, really special place. So growing up, I always knew that I wanted to work there in some capacity. And then I, ended up my whole trajectory, school and working. I was living in Chicago for a while and living that amazing life of graduating college and being a Midwesterner and then moving to Chicago and living where all the other Midwesterners live. And then one day I had an epiphany. I was working in this organization and everything amazing that I had seen in Zingerman's, I didn't see in this organization. And I literally, throughout my whole career trajectory, I had been so spoiled by, I hadn't even worked at Zingerman's yet, but I had been so spoiled by just seeing what they were all about that I kept working at all these different places and being like, I can't work here anymore. Like, what are you guys doing? So I got to the point where I was working with this company in Chicago, and I had a coworker who said, we were coming back from a client meeting, and she just said, I really didn't like my last job, and I don't really like this one. And like, I guess that's just life. Like, I guess that's just gonna be how it goes. And I was literally like, in a movie, I feel like we veered up to the corner and I was like, I gotta get out of the car right now. And I just was like, got out and I was like, I have to go back to Zingerman's. I just have to go back. because I cannot be in an environment where that's okay and that's the norm and that's just an accepted belief. So, and I had interned at Zingerman's and done all of that before, but at this point I was ready to like really, really go back. And so I went back and I started this new, they were trying to build up one of their divisions and really see if it was viable. So they said, come on back and see if you could sort of start this division. If you can, you'll stay in this role. If not, we'll figure out somewhere else for you to go. So it was the sort of corporate gift division, and went in and started up that. And at the end of that season, I was like, you know what? The least busy times for corporate giving corporate gifting are going to be January and February. So, or February, March. And so why don't I go on like a little sabbatical and meet new artists and food producers and try to bring them back for the tasting team? And how about that? And my managing partner was like, write me a vision, And I was like, well, that makes sense, because everything at Zingerman starts with a vision. So I wrote him a vision, go on this amazing trip. It was just absolutely phenomenal. 2 months all over the West Coast, and just every single day was a new sort of adventure. And then I got back from that and I started writing all these other visions. I wrote a vision to start a new Zingerman's business and be like their West Coast ambassador. I wrote a vision to be part of one of their new emerging businesses, and nothing really kind of felt right. And then I just had this moment where I realized I can keep writing these visions just for my career, but I'm 25 right now. What do I want my life to look like when I'm 30? If I just keep writing these visions about my career, then I'm not, like, it's so much bigger than that. So I was living with my parents at the time, and my friend was going to be out of town, and I asked her, Ange, can I just like borrow your apartment for the weekend? And she's like, okay, what? And I literally just locked myself in the apartment for the weekend, and I just peeled back the layers and kept asking myself those scary questions of not just what do I want, but like, what do I really, really, really want that is so core to who I am, that even over 5 of the most formative years of anyone's life, 25 to 30, those things will still remain the same. And at the end of that, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it, but at the end of that weekend, I had gone through a lot of snacks, and I had my vision for every area of my life, personal, professional, financial, spiritual, relational, every area of my life for 5 years from that day. And it was right? You like emerged from this apartment. I hadn't seen daylight in the whole weekend. I'm like, oh my gosh, but I was so inspired. I was so ready. And I also realized that it is so hard to do that alone. And I just knew that I did not want anyone else to have to go through that process alone. So that was sort of the kernel. And then after sharing my vision with my managing partners at Zingerman's, they knew where I wanted to go. And so this opportunity for their biggest vendor, Battalion Foods, was looking for a sales manager. So they recommended me for the position. And 3 weeks later, I was in Sicily, in this tiny town with my 2 suitcases, where like you look this way and there's the water, and this way there's the end of town. And I did that. And then that sort of came to its natural conclusion. And I got a one-way ticket to Spain and figured like, okay, well, I'll go there and see what happens and go from there. And I went over to Spain and then ended up staying, and then ended up going to India, and then moving to Alabama. And I had my first client over in Spain. Visioning had been kind of the common thread. I had been doing 2-week visions while I was in Sicily, because it was just my boss and I were on really different pages. And I was like, if I just focus on his definition of success, I might go crazy. So I have to really think about what my own definition of success is, not just in my work, but like I'm living in a foreign country. I'm making friends. I'm learning a new language. What does that look like for me? And then when I went over to Spain, of course, it's amazing and exciting and romantic to say you get a one-way ticket to another country. But anyone who's listening who's had that experience, you also have that like Wednesday where you're like, what am I doing? So I wrote a 3-month vision, a 90-day vision while I was in Spain. And that was really, that was just incredible how that all played out. And then when I was in Spain, and I had a little food blog, and everyone said, if you really want to learn about food, you've got to go to northern Spain. You got to go to Galicia, and that's where you're really going to learn about some incredible things. So I was doing some research, found this company that was doing culinary tourism, and reached out to them and said, hey, like, could I intern? Could I come do something? Could I come check out what you guys are doing? They emailed me back and said, we would love that, but we're at this crossroads in our business. We're not really sure which way to go. And I was like, I can help you with your vision. That's perfect. Oh my goodness. And then I probably checked their website and saw what their fee, their room and board fee was. And I was like, oh my gosh, my coaching fee is exactly the same as your room and board. So, duh. And of course I didn't have a coaching fee. I didn't know. But so I went and I worked with them on their vision, and that was phenomenal. And then when I got to Alabama, I had a cousin who was living there, and she's like, just come figure things out from here. I got there and I decided, like, it's time, let's do this. It's time to really help other people not have to go through this process by themselves. So started, and then everything just kind of grew from there. And since then I've had the chance to go all over the world and work with incredible visionaries and organizations and teams and young people, and really been able to help them, again, just not have to go through that very intensive process all alone. So.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
I want to get clarity on one thing, if you don't mind.
Please.
Doing visions,
Yeah.
What is that? What is doing visions? How do you do visions? And
it's my first question.
That's a huge question. Yeah. Obviously it's a huge question. And I think it's probably going to be the bulk of this whole conversation, but I just love how it was interesting how you were articulating. I went here and I did some visions, and I did visions over there, and I was visioning here and I was visioning. And it's like, I think I understand what vision is in an abstract way, but like, how do you, like, you're using it in this verb tense that I
Right.
just like,
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's one of the, that's one of the things I love most about these conversations, right? Because I literally see everything in the world through the lens of vision. And it's so great to be able to have these conversations and be like, oh yeah, that's not just like a thing. So, pardon me. So one of the biggest pieces that will sort of hopefully help create some more clarity around this whole topic as well is what vision really, like we said, what vision really means. And so many people, I mean, if you read any business book, listen to any TED Talk, read a blog post, you're going to come across the word vision at least 3 times a day. But almost none of those times will you have somebody who then says what it actually is and how you actually do it. And so, again, while there are so many different definitions of vision out there and they're all valid, when I think about vision, I think of a definition of success at a specific point in the future. So a definition of success at a specific point in the future. And when we think about breaking that statement up, we've got 2 pieces. We've got the definition of success. And when we say definition of success, I mean your definition of success, not anyone else's definition of success, not society's definition, not your best friend's definition, not your colleague's definition, not your competitor's definition, not your parents or your partner's or your kids' definition, no one else's definition but yourself. And not even your past self's definition of success, your current self's definition of success, right? And then that specific point in the future, when I say specific, I mean it's literally for a specific day of a specific month of a specific year specific. And the idea is that you literally get to that day of that month of that year, you read the vision out loud, and it's the reality that you've created around you. And it's not a magic pill and it's not a silver bullet. It's because, again, you've been intentional and proactive about sort of creating. There's an amazing, and again, anyone listening would definitely benefit from looking up a gentleman named Kevin Bailey. I got to collaborate with him on a vision launch that we were doing for an organization, sort of like their vision kickoff. And he is a specialist in visualization and mindset work. And so we were totally geeking out about all this vision stuff. And he phrased it in this way that I absolutely loved. He said, vision is really creating that memory of the future. And that's what visualization is. Right? We're creating a memory of the future. And, our minds don't really, if we feel it, if we absolutely feel it in our bones, our brain doesn't actually know if it's a real experience that happened or if we just kind of made it up. So it's sort of like then we've already been there and now we're just kind of catching up to it. So when we're talking about that specific point in the future, again, it's this idea of creating that memory of the future. And the other beautiful thing about vision and times in the future is that I think of vision like an accordion. So you can really stretch it out and have that long-term 5-year vision, or you can accordion it down and have a really short-term vision. So when I was going, when I was on my like mini sabbatical, whatever you want to call it, on the West Coast and meeting artists and food producers, I'm what they say, like a recovering perfectionist. But at the time I was a total perfectionist, and it was the first time no one was giving me my definition of success. I had created the vision for this whole experience. I didn't have a boss with me every day telling me what to do and where to hit the mark and what goals. I was on my own. And so no matter how much I did, no matter how hard I worked every single day, I felt like I was failing. It was never enough. I had never sampled enough olive oils, and I never met enough vinegar producers. And like, as silly as that sounds, I'm sure everyone listening can relate to that idea where it just doesn't matter how much you do. It's just never enough. Right. And so I realized that if I kept pinning my definition of success to, well, I'll feel successful when my to-do list is done, and I'll feel successful when the work is done, the to-do list is never done and the work is never done. And if that's the only way you're going to feel successful, I was literally never going to feel successful a day in my life. And I was like, just sort of had this moment where I was just like, I am unwilling to feel like that. I'm on this incredible adventure that is so rare that somebody gets to just do. And I'm just unwilling to feel like a failure every single day. So I wrote my first daily vision, and I just realized, like, I've always thought of vision in this organizational long-term way, coming from Zingerman's and seeing how incredibly powerful it was. But this tool I can use in internal, and I can use it for the very short term. And so I literally just wrote my first daily vision, and so I wrote it in the morning, right? And you write it in the present tense, like it's already happened. And the first daily vision was literally, I'm getting into bed and I feel a little bit better than I did when I woke up. And you might be listening. Yes, go ahead, Laura.
I was going to ask, because I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking this. A lot of times in coaching, we think in terms of goals as well. And so I'm wondering if you can help articulate the difference between a vision,
Yes.
5-year vision, and a goal.
Totally.
How would you differentiate those two?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked. That's like one of my favorite things. So I personally don't use the word goal. I talk about targets and benchmarks, and again, I have visionaries who I work with who they use the word goal. It's absolutely not a bad word to use, but there is such a difference that I sort of have found myself not using that verbiage as much anymore. So absolutely, let's sort of break it down, the difference between vision and goals. So we think about vision, right? We think about that definition of success at a specific point in the future. And some people might be sitting here being like, that's exactly what a goal is, like a SMART goal, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, there's two pieces to this. One is what I think of as what I call the Goalkeeper Principle. And that is when we think about a goal, sometimes that implies a goalkeeper. And so oftentimes we set goals that are really sort of in someone else's hands, or we create goals that are really outside of ourselves. And so if you think about, and I know nothing about sports, but go with me on this analogy, right? So like, imagine you're a soccer player and you have the best training and the best nutrition and the best mindset and the best coach and the best everything. And you visualized, scoring that goal, and you've like done all that work. Well, that's amazing. But there's also a goalkeeper who also has done all that mindset of keeping you out of that goal. And they have the best nutrition and they have the best coach and they have the best, right? So sometimes we'll set up a goal where we are essentially creating a situation in which there is that goalkeeper. And then we're sort of feeling like, oh, I might hit the goal, I might not. I don't know. Somebody else is in the way. So it really depends on somebody else whether or not I hit this goal. And so to give you kind of an example, I had one visionary that I worked with back in Alabama, in Birmingham, who came to me and said, I really, one of my goals has always been to get on the top 30 under 30 list in Birmingham. And so as we were working on his vision, I said, let's create a little bit more intentional vagueness around that, because that goal sort of implies a goalkeeper, right? Somebody's editing that publication and they might have a favorite niece who makes the list instead of you, not because she's a better 30 under 30, just because, it's favorite niece or whatever. So if we just attach one of our definitions of success to that, and that doesn't happen because of something totally out of your control, I don't want you to feel like a failure. I don't want to feel like, oh, well, I didn't hit it, so like, there goes that. So I said, that's critically important, but let's just create some more intentional vagueness around it. And we ended up in his vision saying, I've gotten recognition in the local press. So that opened him up to getting 30 under 30, but it also opened him up to so much more. And so because he wasn't so pigeonholed and I have to do this one thing that's actually ultimately in somebody else's hands. I can't tell you, it's like in the movies, again, like a montage where they're showing you all the publications that he's been in, right? But he's been in so many spreads all over, and he ended up also getting in the top 30 under 30 list. But we didn't really just sort of create this one single-minded myopic focus on just that, because we recognized that ultimately that was out of his hands. So one of the things that we'll do in visioning is we'll say, publications like, or we have been featured in publications like the Harvard Business Review. So absolutely, sometimes we want to name, we want to put in there, we want to articulate If somebody comes to me and says, no, like I want to be in the HBR, great, let's put it in there, but let's add some more intentional vagueness so that's not your only shot at success. So one thing with goals and vision is to recognize, is there a goalkeeper in this situation? Are you setting it up in a way in which somebody else kind of is holding that success in their hands and they can give it to you or they can take it away? Another piece is that, you know, a lot of times people create goals in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is they just sit down and they think like, oh, I'm thinking about my future. So I'm going to start with my future and where do I want to go? And I want to do this, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. But a lot of times what that ends up creating is a list of goals that people have said to me, you know, people have said this language, they're like, I just feel like my goals are like screaming at me from the page. I feel like my goals are pushing. And a vision doesn't push, a vision pulls. So really at the end of the day, when somebody says, I want to set goals, in my mind, I'm always like, well, what's the vision? How could we possibly know the goals until we know where you're headed? So once we have the vision in place, we can work backwards and figure out the targets and the benchmarks and the milestones that will get you there. But without that context, they're just sort of like these goals floating around, and oftentimes people can start to feel really detached. The goals, they've always been a goal setter, and they start to feel detached from those goals. They're not motivating them in the way they were. They're just sitting there sort of like gathering dust. And then the other piece is, because those goals don't necessarily have context around them, if you hit a roadblock, it's really easy to be like, well, I'm going to change the goal. I'm going to change the goalpost. I'm going to move that target, right? Or, oh, like that's not as important to me anymore. Or, I don't know, this one's just always at the bottom of my list, and I guess it's not that important, right? So it just sort of, in my mind, how could we possibly create the goal if we don't know what the vision is first? And then understand that the goals are the milestones and the benchmarks on the way to the vision. But when we have a vision in place, it's our destination. It's where we're going. Now, the roadmap to get there is going to change time and time and time again. The destination remains the same. So a lot of times people get confused between my plan or my roadmap or strategic plan or whatever you want to call it and my vision. And the idea is that absolutely does the plan need to change? For sure, 100%. That's part of being a fantastic visionary and roadmapper, is that you need to have those skills and build those muscles. But the vision itself, that destination remains the same. So to go back to this whole idea of vision and goals, the other piece is that very often we're in this mindset of like 10x your life and 10x your goals. And like, you know, goals always have to be more and better and more and better. It's always a stair step. And vision is one of my favorite things about vision is does not have to be that way at all. So your 90-day vision might be, over the past 90 days, I've actually given myself permission to have no freaking clue what's going on and be okay with that. And for once in my life, not have a laundry list of goals. That can be your vision, right? But you would never have a goal that says like, I don't have any goals.
Right.
So what's the anatomy of a vision? So if you're working with a client and you're helping them sort of, and I don't know what verb you would use. Clearly visioning is a verb, but you know, if you were going to walk them through how to build a goal or imagine a goal or not a goal, a vision. Sorry. Oh, okay. Imagine a vision, build a vision, construct, whatever term you use. How do you know that it's a vision and not a target or not a goal? Like, what's the anatomy of a vision specifically?
Ooh, yes. Okay. So man, you guys, such a good question. So to kind of back into this, one of the most important things that I think people haven't heard about, or because again, it's not like we have a visioning class, like you don't take visioning class in school, right? So there's no education around this, you know, there's all distractions everywhere. It makes total sense that people don't necessarily have these tools. And so one of the most critical things, like I mentioned with goal setting, is it's really easy to get in that mindset of thinking about my future. I'm going to think about my future. When I tell people, what's the first thing that you think of when I say vision, they say future. So of course it makes sense that a lot of people, whether it's visioning or goal setting, will sit down and just start to think about their future. But before we can even begin to think about where we are headed, we have to understand how we got to where we are. Got to understand how we got to where we are. And if we don't do that, we are missing this like treasure trove, this diamond field of context and patterns and all these different pieces that we can connect the dots and understand. Okay, so that's been my trajectory. Oh, right now it makes sense. And when you do that, not only do you gain this sense of ownership of understanding that trajectory, but you just start to see these patterns emerge. And some of those patterns have served you really well. Some of those patterns haven't served you so well. Some of those patterns you want to continue to repeat. Some of those patterns you need to break or release or let stay in the past, right? But we've got to create that foundation. When I'm working with a visionary one-on-one, sometimes that personal trajectory map goes into the hours we're spending on that, because it's so critical. Now when I'm doing it in a workshop, it's 15 minutes. So there's also ways to distill it and condense it, in other ways that I'm working with visionaries. There's also ways to kind of like get right to it. Some people listening are like, what are you talking about? Hours? I can't even talk for hours. Trust me, you can. If it's talking about yourself, you absolutely can. But when we get through, and I mean that in the best way possible, all of us need more of that time to talk about ourselves. So once we get past that, then we really need to, I had a visionary who used the phrase, and I love it. He said, we need to gain a true lens on our current reality. Right. So we understand how we got to where we are. Now we need to understand where we are, and we've got to gain that true lens in our current reality. We've really got to take stock. We've really got to understand what that looks like. And if you think about Google Maps, right? Like what's the first thing that Google Maps asks you when you want to go somewhere?
Where are you starting from?
It's where you're starting from, right? And Erin, like, you are leaps and bounds ahead of most people, because most people are like, oh, it's your destination, right? And they think that way for Google, and they think that way for life, right? Like, oh, it's where you want to go. But before you can get where you want to go, you got to know where you're starting. If you just put an endpoint into Google, it literally could do nothing for you.
True.
Right?
True.
So we then have to understand really where we are now, and not just like, oh yeah, like things are okay, and like this is good and this is bad and whatever, but like really, really dive into that and really understand that. Only then, once we've done that, are we ready to really continue peeling back the layers on our true non-negotiables. And this is so often where people start to realize, I have always thought that I wanted this thing, or that's always been a goal of mine. And actually it was somebody else's goal, or it was society's goal, or it was a goal I've been chasing since I was young. And looking at my personal trajectory, that's something I can leave behind. Right. And so you start to understand and really peel back layers of what are those true, absolute line in the sand. I am unwilling to live a life without these things, or with these things. What are those non-negotiables for the future? And the other piece of that is thinking through, what is that driving purpose, and what are my own set of core values, not, an organization set of core values, or not like the poster on the wall that says teamwork with the flying eagle, or like whatever. It's like, what are my actual set? What are those core values? Now, not just the words. How do you know if you're living in alignment with these values? Then we do work to really think through, where am I living in alignment with this value? Where am I not? And I'm human, and that's okay. But so much of that work, oftentimes when I'm working with visionaries, that section, they come and being like, I want a vision. I'm so excited for my vision. And I'm like, great, we'll get there. Right. And then we go through this process, but going through that, where are things aligned and where are things misaligned, is one of the most powerful, eye-opening parts of the process, because so much of the vision is going to be what it looks like if we narrow that gap, right? Between where we are and where we want to be, what's in alignment and what's not. So that's sort of leading up to the vision itself. And then once we get into the actual writing of the vision, there are sort of 4 characteristics of a really, really solid vision. So one is that, and I'll go back and forth because there's some like techniques and there's some characteristics and all that. So just to get to the heart of what you're saying about sort of like the anatomy of a vision. So a vision could be my own vision. My current 5-year vision, which is for June 1st, 2022, is 11 pages long. I have visionaries who their long-term vision is 6 pages and 5 pages. When I work with organizations, typically it's 3 pages. If I write a vision for, a session that I'm doing, or a really hard conversation I'm about to have, or one time I did when I was on a vacation and things like totally went awry. Maybe it's like 2 paragraphs scrawled in the back of a notebook on the back of a receipt. So it's not length, right? So the anatomy of a vision isn't bound by length. But I do always say, when people say like, oh, a vision statement, I'm like, what's that? What's a vision statement? How can you write your vision, your definition of success at a specific point in the future, a statement, right? It's so much more than that. So we really want to flesh out the evidence that we've gotten to where we wanted to go. So we want to make sure, we want to write our vision in the present tense, like it's already happened. Again, like Kevin talks about, like we want to create this memory of the future. And then we want to describe the evidence that we've gotten to where we want it to go. So if a visionary, in their first job says, I feel happy and successful, I'm like, well, that's great, but like, how would I know? I always tell them, okay, if I was to see you a year from now, or let's say their vision's a 5-year vision. If I was to see you 5 years ago and we were walking down the street and I hadn't seen you in 5 years, and you were walking towards me and I couldn't say anything to you, we were far enough away where I couldn't talk to you, and you couldn't just be like, hey, Lois, I'm really happy and super successful. It's great over here. How would I know that you were happy and successful? How would you be carrying yourself? What would you be, would your eyes be glistening in a different way? Would you be carrying something different? Would you be wearing something? Like, how would I know? Show me, don't just tell me. Right. And again, with goal setting, sometimes just to tell. It's like a goal might be, I'm trying to do this right now, do my little 30 push-ups a day challenge. Okay. So I could write a goal of I did 30 push-ups a day, or I could write a vision of it's the end of the day. My muscles are so good and sore. I love feeling all sweaty and gross. Like I've never been so close to my carpet. Like I've never had my clothes, facing close to the carpet. And it's actually way prettier than I realized. Like, when you build out that evidence that you've gotten to where you wanted to go, it really brings it inside of yourself. So you want the vision you want to be able to hear it and see it and smell it and touch it and taste it. Show me. I want to feel like I'm there with you. What would you see around you that would show you that you had gotten to where you wanted to go? You could say a goal is I want to win an award, or you could say, I'm sitting in my home here in 2025 and I'm looking around the walls and it's just amazing as my eyes trail over all these, visuals of these accomplishments that I've been able to create with myself and my team or whatever it is, right? That's just a different context. Now we're not the success to I won this one award and when I get that then I'll feel successful. It's like I've built this life where I'm looking around, I'm seeing this evidence of what I've created. The other piece about goals is, again, we don't want to wait to feel successful until the goal is done. Sometimes people feel like, okay, once I hit the goal, then, once I break this many Instagram followers, then I'll feel successful. Once I get this many coaching clients, then I'll feel, it's the success is moving through that path and understanding where I am in relation to it, and if I'm on track or off track, and what the root causes are, and all of those different pieces. So we get to the anatomy of vision. We want it to be written in the present tense. We want it to be written in such a way where I always say, like, you wanna get butterflies in your stomach when you read that vision. You want it to be just enough where you're like, ooh, I don't know how I am going to do that, but I am going to figure it out. And you got to go with your gut. When I read your vision, I want to know that it is the vision that you have for yourself, not the vision you think somebody else wants you to have. Right? Because we have all these people in our life and they want the best for us, but they have their own ideas of what success means.
So if you'll permit me, just sort of like a recap of that, because I think this does really lend itself to health coaching. And totally. I say that as Laura and I are on the faculty. We teach health coaching to our students at the school that we work for. And so I think in the health coaching realm, we do get overly focused on goals. Not any fault of our own. Goals are important. We know that. I'm thinking, for example, if I set a SMART goal with my client to, we have this, in-depth coaching conversation where we co-create the goals, and it's like, okay. So Sally, just to recap the goal for this week, you're going to get to bed before 10 p.m. on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, so you can get full 8 hours of sleep, wake up feeling rested, so you can get to work and feel really on top of your game and have that mental clarity. How does that sound? And we're going to check back in. Here's the accountability plan for that. And that's great. Like, that's nice. But I'm going to go with but, actually. But if that goal just is developed out of thin air and Sally's like, yep, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that 3 nights a week, go to bed, but it's not tied to her vision and her values, vision and values. So this is the part where I think a lot of health coaches come in, like, I'm going to work on your macros. I'm going to get your food and your sleep and your stress and your exercise dialed in, but it's not tied in any way to vision or values. The client only has this fleeting moment of buy-in while they're on the phone with you. Yes, coach. Yep. 3 nights a week, I'm going to go to bed, but there's no connection to the vision or value. So we teach that you start with vision and values. That gets overlooked a lot. So I like the way you kind of described it. Like, the vision is the end game, and the goals are the little stepping stones that get there. You really can't have effective goals without a vision. So that's how I interpreted everything you kind of said. Yeah. And I'm saying this to our health coaching listeners. Goals are great. Even better when they're connected to your client's vision and values. So I'm just thinking about this, like, in terms of in context of a coaching relationship, and my notes are all over the map, so bear with me on this. But it's like, what if you had a conversation with your coaching client? Like, okay, the coaching client comes to you with like, I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to have more energy. I want to understand how to support my body with food and blah, 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 whatever. We never spend time. I shouldn't say we never do, but it's uncommon for health coaches to spend time saying, okay, let's talk about how you got here. Like, how did you get to this point where now you've got these big objectives? Let's spend some time really, finding out what got you to this moment. Let's tag to your non-negotiables, your core values. And now visualize. We actually do teach this in our course. We teach our coaches to ask their clients for their vision of optimal health, their vision of perfect health. Tell me what your vision of exceptional health is. But I don't think a lot of coaches are doing it, to be honest with you.
Right.
I just think it's out of their comfort zone.
Or it's not specific. Like they're just like, oh, I want, it's not like, tell me what you're doing. If you hit optimal health, what does that mean you're doing, rather than what you're doing today? I think I agree with you, Erin. I think a lot of coaches don't get specific enough.
They don't. But here's the deal. I love that you brought that up, Laura, because Lois, when you said this whole idea of intentional vagueness, I really love that phrase. Mm-hmm. But it's the opposite of specific, right? And so when we get into this, I'm a coach, I'm helping my clients with their goals. They're specific, measurable, attainable.
Right.
But the specific thing is great for goals, but for vision, there needs to be more of sort of a not nebulousness, but flexibility, or, what am I trying to say there? So for health coaches,
it's kind of a feeling almost, right? Like it's kind of a feeling or a state of being.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, Laura, I didn't interrupt you.
No, go ahead. So
this is like the heart and the art of visioning is the blend of extreme specificity and intentional vagueness. So in our vision, we want to be extremely specific about our non-negotiables and intentionally vague about the rest to leave room for evolution and growth and change and all of that. So just to give you a quick example, the first vision that I wrote when I was 25, I had this paragraph about the place that I lived, my home, right? And I wrote about like the candles flickering in our outdoor space that we can't live without, and the cozy blankets, and how it just feels like anyone could, show up at my house at a moment's notice, and the house just looks like it's waiting for them, just like waiting to welcome them in, right? Now I'm a far way away from that, so just know that it's not like I'm focused on that yet, but I'm moving towards it. But if you read, so it's this paragraph and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm there. When you reread it, you would realize that it never says what city, state, country, hemisphere that home is in. And it doesn't say if I'm in an apartment or house or a yurt. Like, it doesn't say any of that, because for me, the non-negotiable was the environment I was creating for myself. And I didn't really care. I was excited. I wanted that to have opened myself up to that being anywhere in the world. Now, so I left that intentionally vague. Now, other people might say, my non-negotiable is I'm living in this apartment, in this place, in this, and like, I don't really care what it looks like. I'm not that person. Amazing. That's where we want to shift it for you. So again, for a client, for a health coaching client, like you said, it's so critical, because they might be coming in saying, I want to lose this many pounds and I want to do this, this, and this. And I would be so fascinated to know, is that really your vision, or is that the vision you think somebody else wants you to have? Mm-hmm. Right. And so go ahead, Erin.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt, but it's just like I'm trying to put my head into this from the perspective of like the example you just gave. A client gets on the phone with you and they say, let's say you're working through a whole discovery with this client and they say, well, my non-negotiable is I want to fit into my size 6 jeans. And if a client said that to me, I'd be like, well, I'm not the coach for you. But what I should say I guess what the journey we go on is that really your intrinsic motivator, or is that some kind of extrinsic motivator that's been foisted on you? But then how do you ask those questions?
Well, the beauty is you can just ask that. You can ask like, hey, what I've noticed with a lot of clients is they have their own vision of where they want to go, but that's been buried by layers and layers and layers of thinking about where everyone else wants them to go. And that might be subconscious for you. So it's like, I'm not saying that all through your life you've been, oh, you want me to do this and you want me to do this, and consciously carrying that. But there's a good chance, if you're like most human beings in this world, that not only have you had society's definitions of success layered on, but everyone else who hopefully wants the best for you in your life, right? And so if you're like most of my clients, then I would imagine that we could peel back some layers, and maybe that is truly absolutely your definition of success. And if it is, we are going to get you there and whatever, right? But let's peel back the layers. Why is that your definition of success? What does that mean? What evidence is that you've gotten to where you want it to go?
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, for another person, that might be such a great way for them to create that connection with the future. Is like, oh, I could fit into this. Like one of my visionaries wrote that he could fit into the suit that he got married in. And now he's been on this incredible journey, and he texted me the other day and he sent me a picture of it, and it was, him wearing it. And it's amazing, right? So we also want to remember that it's that might help them build that out. But again, in my process with him, I needed to make sure that the vision for his own personal growth, which involved his health, that was truly going with his gut and really giving himself permission to separate from what other people might want of him or for him.
This stuff comes up, in the health coaching world. Anything related to weight loss is very common, right? I mean, 9 out of every 10 clients that I speak to, that's a goal. And to use Erin's example of, I want to be able to fit into my size 6 jeans. So my first thought is, okay, apparently this person has a pair of size 6 jeans sitting around somewhere from another time.
Right.
So what is it about being able to fit into that size 6 jeans that's so important? Where were you? How are you feeling? What is it about being able to wear those jeans specifically that makes you believe this is success to me? Because maybe we can recreate not just the size 6 jeans, because, we can probably get you there, but really at the end of the day, what do you want to feel about this? And at the end of the day, it's back when I wore those size 6 jeans, I felt young, youthful, and sexy.
Yeah.
That's what I want to feel, right? That's why I want to be in the size 6 jeans. And that's okay. Now that's a vision. The size 6 jeans is maybe just some evidence.
Right.
That perhaps I got there, but who knows? Maybe along the way, we actually find more evidence, different evidence that says, hey, I'm feeling young, youthful, and sexy because my husband and I had sex 3 times this week. or when, just a few months ago, it's been crickets.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's just so much to this. Erin, that's a great example of size 6 jeans or 25 pounds. I have a girlfriend of mine who is, she's a college friend of mine. She's super tiny. I mean, I'm not very big. I'm only 5'2". She's like 4'11". She's teeny. And she's got this, but she's got this weight in her head that she believes she should be.
Yep.
Like 100 pounds, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the goal is always to get there, but it's not always helpful. And she's constantly feeling kind of like a failure or that she's overweight because she hasn't hit that particular weight. And, this is an example of another conversation of why that weight. What is it about that weight? This, for me, I think is an example of something somebody else put on her. Somewhere in her life, she heard that someone told her that a person her size should weigh 100 pounds.
Yep.
Right?
So the other piece of that I'm really glad you brought up is like, she just always feels like she's failing. And it's really a really like slippery slope when we get to when I get there, then I'll feel successful. Because then when we get there, we have to hold on to it for dear life. And it's scarcity getting there, scarcity once you have it. You're not happy once you have it, then you have to keep it. Oh my God, I'm 100 pounds. Then all you do is worry that you're going to be 101, 102, 103. Like that is just a lose situation. When we think about a goal too, and many people, again, that I'm sure listeners, they work with their people and they make sure that, yes, we have this goal in place, but it's the journey. And so I want to acknowledge that I know that that's happening for a lot of listeners already, which is amazing. The other thing to remember about the difference between vision and goals is a vision is the cumulative evidence that you've gotten to where you want it to go. So my 5-year vision says a bunch of things. Some of those sentences became a reality 2 weeks after I wrote the vision. Some of them haven't become a reality yet. Some of them became a reality and dropped out of being a reality and are a reality again. Some of them became a reality in a way that I never expected, right? So not to be totally cliche, but it absolutely is about the journey. And it's not just like, oh, I hit the one vision at the end and like, rah, rah, I'm here. Mm-hmm. It's like little crumbs everywhere. It's like, oh, that part of my vision is over here and here and here. And you're going to make different parts of that vision a reality at different times. So the other thing that I want to bring up, because I feel like this is this just might be relevant as well, is sometimes with goals, we get hyper focused on a goal, and it's really not, again, connected on sort of a deeper level. And so there's this concept called the formula for change that was developed decades and decades ago in the field of organizational dynamics. And basically it says anytime we want to create a change, we're going to come up against the natural resistance to that change. And that resistance isn't good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. And you guys know this more than most people, right? So then if we have change on one side, resistance on the other, it's like a seesaw. There's something that tips the scales. What tips the scales is these variables in the middle: dissatisfaction, vision, first steps of action. If dissatisfaction multiplied by vision, multiplied by first steps of action are all greater than the resistance to change, that change can take hold. But since you multiply those variables together, if any of those variables is a zero, what happens?
Right.
It all zeroes out. So I had a client once who came to me, and part of his personal growth facet of his vision, and when I say personal growth, so when I work with a visionary, it's personal growth, professional growth, financial growth, spiritual growth, if that resonates with them, and relational growth, friends, family, partner, pets, all that. So I always include health, wellness, all of that in the personal growth personal growth section. So in the personal growth facet of his vision, he talked about absolutely being healthier in all these different ways. And so we then were working backwards from his vision, creating the 90-day benchmarks and all those different things. And one of them was, okay, well, it makes sense that if that's where I want to go for over the next 90 days, and we write the benchmark like it's already happened. So we write, if you're thinking goal, target, benchmark, we write it like, not like I am going to, it's like I have. It is this date and I have. And again, it sounds like you guys are working on that with students all the time. Like we really want to create that time box and work backwards. So his was exercising X amount of times a week. So, we're checking in, didn't do it. Lois didn't do it. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? So we get on the phone and he's like, Lois, I know what you're going to tell me. I promise I'm going to start working out next week. And I was like, whoa, easy killer. I don't know if that's the change that really makes sense for us to work on right now. Let's back this train up. Let's look at the formula for change. So, okay, change you want to create is being more healthy. Okay, great. We have the vision in place, so we know the V is not a zero. We have that there. You got the F, you got the first steps of action. You have your earbuds, you have your clothes, your buddy owns a gym down the street. Okay, that's not a barrier. But do you have enough dissatisfaction? Is there a big enough gap between where you are and where you want to be right now? And he's like, well, I mean, it's winter. Like, I don't really, the love handles are like fine. Like, I'm not wearing a swimsuit. My wife doesn't really care. And I'm like, okay, well, if there's clearly not enough dissatisfaction here, so I don't want you to spend one more second thinking about working out, right? Because all you're going to do is create a failure hangover where every night you go to bed feeling like failure, and then you wake up, and if you wake up with a failure hangover, what makes you think that you could do any different today, right? So I said, we're just going to create that negative momentum, because people say momentum. It's like, in a positive way, it seems like that's like when I say momentum, it's positive. We can absolutely create momentum in a negative direction. So I said, all right, so I'm not letting you off the hook. We're still focused on this facet of your vision. What other area of your health do you have enough dissatisfaction around? And he's like, well, he drank, I'm from Michigan, so I say pop, but like soda, right? So he drank like an absurd amount of soda, and that was also part of his vision to really lighten up on that. And he was starting to get headaches, and his stomach was really starting to bother him, and he had enough dissatisfaction there. So I'm like, all right, we're going to press pause on the workouts. I don't want to keep hearing that failure over and over again, because you're just creating a mental groove where that's just what you expect of yourself now. And I want to switch over to where you do have a big enough gap for dissatisfaction, because that's what was zeroing everything out. We started focusing on that. By the end of the 90 days, guess what he started doing as well? Working out. Right? Because he had now created the success afterglow instead of the failure hangover, right? And so now if you wake up every day and you're like, did that, then you create that momentum and you gain that confidence, that sense of self that I can make my vision a reality. I can do this. And so, that's the other piece, is that sometimes we get so hyper-focused on this one goal or target or benchmark or whatever it is you want to call it. And we haven't taken a second to done a back of the napkin look at the equation for change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's interesting. I love that you spoke to that, because I think, we hear this all the time in health coaching, well, probably any type of coaching. But if you ask your client, and I think a coach should probably ask their client this, what would help motivate you? What motivates you to keep going when things get hard? And the answer is always, well, I'm really motivated by results. I'm always motivated. If I can see results, I'm motivated. So I think that kind of speaks to the story you just told. This
Mhm.
client wasn't seeing results because the thing that he was trying to do wasn't important enough
Right.
moment. So let's change. Okay, you have to see. We want our clients to see some kind of result, some kind of positive outcome. So we have to pivot and start uncovering where we can move the needle on positive outcomes, so that they can start to feel that momentum. To your point.
Totally.
So when you get into relationships with your clients, like this example that you just gave, are you meeting whatever interval you're meeting, if it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, are you always connecting back to the greater vision? Is that something that you do in every session, or does that kind of float in the background and then you get more granular on those coaching sessions with your clients?
It's a great question. Always, 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 we're tying it back to the vision, always. So whether it's in an individual or an organization, the way that it becomes a living, breathing part of who you are is talking about it. If you, I mean, like my friends, it's like a joke, right? Because I'm always like, oh, that's in my vision. Or, oh my gosh, like part of my vision is this, or like, part of my vision is to be better at names, right? Because I could say, oh, I'm terrible at names, but then of course you're going to keep being terrible at names because you've branded yourself terrible at names. So part of my vision is that. So literally, like when I'm at a networking event, I'll say, you know what, part of my vision is to get better at names. So if I ask you your name 5 times, like that's why. They don't know me, they don't know my vision, but like I need to constantly be talking about it, thinking about it. It's always with me. You know, I have it on my phone. I read it. Like I'm always going back to it, right? So for my visionaries, I'm always tying things back. And if they send me something, I'll go back and I'll look at their core values and their questions that they ask themselves to know if they're living in alignment with those values or not. And I had a client who was feeling just really in a situation that she just was just anxious and uneasy about. And I went back to looked at her core values and I'm like, it makes so much sense because you're in a situation right now where you can't live this value. So I just want to connect those dots because it's not like you're just feeling weird for some reason and you're kind of crazy. It's like, of course, this just reinforces how important that value is. And I know it's really hard to be out of alignment, but I also want you to like acknowledge that that's showing you how much you care about this value. That's really important to you. And that's why you feel so much tension. Or I'll be talking with a visionary and they'll be saying this, and this. I'm like, yeah, I know. In your vision, we talk about this. And like, hey, that sounds like some evidence. Like we're, so absolutely, we are always going back to that vision. And that's where when you create those salient, I call them like vignettes, right? Like those little, I could go on forever, so I don't want to give too many examples, but some little scenario that I just say, like I tell my clients, like just make it up, like just make up a scenario of you walk into the kitchen, like you open the thing and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like the colors of the rainbow. And I just, whatever, right? Like you create that vignette. It's also way easier for them to remember that and you to remember that than just like a laundry list of goals to be like, oh wait, what was your 8th goal? It's like, oh man, like I know in your vision you talked about, and like that vision is, 90 days from now, let's say you have a 6-month coaching engagement, right? That's a 6-month part of your vision and you are making that a reality now. Like that is wild. That's amazing, right? So those vignettes, those scenarios, oh, my muscles feel sore, not just that I did X amount of push-ups. Oh, like making your vision happen, like doing it, seeing the evidence, that's evidence, right? Like always bringing it back. And that's why those feeling it, seeing it, touching it, tasting it, that's why that makes it that much powerful, not just in the moment, but for you to coach them to it.
Yeah. I just, being able to tie everything back to the vision in every single session, I think is important on so many different levels. To just continue to keep momentum and moving in the right direction, but also to just try to reinforce commitment to these steps of action when things aren't going the way you expect. So I would love for you to speak a little bit about what do you do when you feel stuck in the mud, things aren't going the way you expect. And I would love for you to address this from the standpoint as a health coach working with a client, but also so important for coaches whose career or business isn't where they want it to be. How do you kind of use your vision to stay on message, I guess, or stay on path?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always come back to is this concept that I think of as patterns over perfection. Patterns over perfection. So whenever I'm working with a visionary, right, and same with listeners, right? We figure out where they want to go, whatever we're calling that. We're working backwards from where they want to go to figure out how to get them there. And then we're checking in along the way. And so some clients, they want to do well for themselves, but also for us, they want to show us I'm doing it. And if you look at their trajectory map, they're a people pleaser, or they've always been in a situation where they had to please somebody else. So they want to be yeah, on track. I'm doing it. Everything's fine, because they think that they're supposed to be perfect. They think that success means on track for 12 weeks in a row or 6 months in a row or whatever. What I always tell my clients is the definition of success for us tracking this is tracking it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the patterns. If the pattern is that you are on track and have a green streak of on track, and I on track is green, off track is red, right? So if you have a green streak of 7 weeks in a row, amazing. I want to see that. But I'm equally wanting to see the one where you yo-yo from red to green, or it's red, and then green, or green, then red. I'm fascinated. Our definition of success, especially at the beginning of our relationship, when we're just starting out, and maybe those first 30 days, this is a whole new skill set. We are building our road mapping muscles. We've created the roadmap. Now we got to get there. So we are building those muscles of understanding what are the patterns. What those patterns are going to reveal to us is, are we tracking the right things in the right way? What are our inflection points? If something's on, and it goes off, great. Tell me about it. I am fascinated by what happened at that inflection point. If it's off, and then on, what happened there? If it's yo-yoing, what's going on there? So I don't want them to think that the definition of success is perfection. The definition of success is patterns. So the more we help them understand that, the more they can be honest with themselves and with us. And really, the whole idea of that personal trajectory map leading up to how did I get to where I am reveals patterns. So we want them to keep understanding where those patterns are continuing to serve them really, really well, or to not serve them so well. So that's one piece of it. So tying the definition of success to the tracking of the thing and the data points. We're just collecting data points at this point. The only way that you aren't going to be successful is if you stop tracking, because it's like somebody says, well, I didn't want to track it because I didn't do it. And I'm like, I clearly haven't explained this well. So we want to make sure that we're helping people understand that, again, the definition of success is collecting those data points and seeing those patterns emerge. So then when we are hitting that roadblock, one of the first things that I always do is I do always go back to that equation for change. So what is zeroing things out? Am I getting stuck in the first steps of action? Or do I have every single first step of action in the universe? Do I have spreadsheets and Trello boards, and I have it's like if you're running your own business, right? And I have this CRM, and I've been doing this, and I have that. I have all the first steps of action. I have the dissatisfaction, I think, but maybe the vision's missing. So I always go back to that first, because that might be really telltale. The other piece is that oftentimes we're doing the right work at the wrong time. So for a coach who's not where they want to in their business, it's really easy, again, thinking about everyone else's definition of success. Oh, well, I gotta be on social media every single day. That's success for me. That's how I'm going to feel successful at the end of the day if I did that. But let's take a look at where you got your clients over the past 6 months. And people always talk about target market. I'm always like, well, we've got a target. That means we've got a bullseye. Right? So if you take a sheet of paper, scratch sheet of paper, back of a receipt, I don't care. Draw a big circle, and then draw 3 other concentric circles, and you got your bullseye in the middle, and look at your clients over the past 6 months and where they've come from. And I want you to plot them. Are they on the outer ring? They're in your target, but or who's in the bullseye? I want you to plot them, and I want you to say where they came from. Now, if they all came from Instagram, great. But if none of them came from Instagram, and you're spending all your time there and feeling like failure every time you don't post the perfect post, and they actually all came from speaking or whatever it was, then you might be doing the right work of social media at the wrong time, right? And I'm not saying that you should then not do anything on social media, but if you're putting all your energy over there, but it's not actually lining up with where things have come from. Again, it's how did I get here? Where am I now? Where am I going? We get so focused on where I'm going that we decide, oh, this is the only path. And then we get frustrated when that's not the path, or we feel like we're failing along the path. We're not moving as fast as we want along the path. And it's not the question isn't which path, it's where am I going, right? And then always working backwards. So one piece is really taking a look at, am I doing the right work at the wrong time? Mm-hmm. Another piece is always, again, going back and grounding yourself in the vision, elevating yourself. I always think of Google Maps. I'm realizing that I use Google Maps all the time, right? So you have that feature where you can click the little magnifying glass and zoom in or zoom out. So whenever somebody is in that state of upset or whatever it is, overwhelmed, feeling out of alignment, I always say, let's zoom out 5 clicks, right? If you're at a crossroads, I want to zoom out enough where I can't actually see like I can see there's roads, but I can't see that actual intersection, right? If you're feeling stuck in the mud, I want to zoom out so I can't see the actual mud. I want to see there's land, but I want, right? And then like, what's going on here from this bigger picture? And then, okay, now we want to zoom back in and reground ourselves in where am I going? When am I going to get there? What is it going to look like when I arrive? And then again, work backwards and figure out how to get there. It's just so often what people do when they get stuck is they lean into the how. How am I going to fix this? How am I going to get out of it? What am I going to do? And it just, again, it's a very push feeling, right? They're in that pushing state and it's very reactive, right? And a lot of times what they're doing is they're moving the visionary mindset. One of my mentors, Singerman's, Ari Weinblatt, always said, the visionary mindset is about moving towards what you do want, not away from what you don't want.
Right.
And so a lot of times when you're stuck, it's like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want to feel disorganized. I don't want to feel like I'm looking at my bank account feeling like, I don't. Well, what do we want, right? What do we want? That is realistic. Yeah. The other piece of vision is, your stretch goal might be like 1 billion clients for this month and financial freedom. And I'm like, cool, but like, do you actually feel attached to that? Like, what I am interested in is the vision that's inspiring and strategically sound. So maybe your definition of success is, I've been pinning my definition of success to like breaking this huge goal. Maybe my definition of success when I look at my patterns is consistency. So for me personally, right now in my business, I know that the biggest thing that I need to work on is consistency. That is my definition of success right now. Do I have targets for number of new clients? Absolutely, I do. But if I'm doing that erratically in a non-sustainable way, then that's great for that month. But then I'm not really getting down to the heart of what I need to create that in a sustainable way. Mm-hmm. So focusing on consistency is my definition of success instead of this and this and this and this and this helps me always come back to that. Like if I'm creating consistency in my day, in my week, then I can feel successful about that. Even if I didn't bring on a new client that week, I know there's no way in the universe I can be consistent for this long and not bring on a new client. Again, it doesn't mean that I can say, oh, like I have no goals and targets and whatever, like however many clients I get. Of course, we need to have those things in place, but really we want to really step it back. Are we doing the right work at the right time? And what is the true definition of success that we are pinning ourselves to? And is it actually serving us less than it could if we just shifted that definition of success? Does that answer your?
It's just like, it's a lot, right? But I think this kind of stuff is so exciting. I just was reflecting back to your origin story where you shared that you kind of sequestered yourself in your friend's apartment and just kind of exploded your vision all over her walls. At least it's how I envisioned it. Just, and obviously you have a natural aptitude or inclination toward this kind of work. And my question is, how the heck does somebody who's not naturally inclined toward this start? Like, is it a sequestering weekend with Post-it notes all over the wall? Or can you just start riffing in a journal? I mean, you gave us the anatomy of a vision, which I loved. But I bet you for a lot of people, and the reason I'm saying this because for me, this is the block I'm having is like, yeah, but I don't have time for that. I don't know where to start with that. And yeah, I'll do that. I'll vision later. But for right now, I just need to get some stuff done. You know what I mean?
Yes.
How do we start?
Yeah. So the first piece is like, you've got to think about your own equation for change, right? Or your formula for change. You've got to know, do I have enough satisfaction right now? If you don't have enough satisfaction, don't work on then go work on the other stuff right now, because you're not going to get through, because it is deep work. It is intensive. I had a visionary that I'm working with it's called the Accelerate Your Vision Academy. And she's like, and she's like saying this huge grin on her face, but she's like, I really started working on this program because I really just wanted to get a lot of stuff done. And now I'm realizing I have to do a lot of stuff before that. And I know it's really important, but and I'm like, I get it, girl. This is the work. This is the work. This is the meat. We're getting in there. So, she was at that point where there was enough dissatisfaction where she was in a place where she could stop just doing and focus on the how and do that. So first you got to be in the right place, and don't blame yourself if you're not there. That's okay. Right. You can still do things like am I doing the right work at the right time, right? You can still do things and sort of have that mindset. Am I moving towards what I do want or away from what I don't want? There's still so many of these little mindset shifts that you can make without, locking yourself in a room. The other piece is that I definitely would recommend looking for a process. You don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why visioning oftentimes gets to the bottom of people's to-do list is because, like you said, they don't know how to do it. Why in the world would I pop something up to the top of my to-do list that I don't know how to do? I'm going to do everything on my to-do list that I do know how to do, right? And of course, it's always going to be that it's important, but it's not urgent. And no one is going to wake up tomorrow and like your world's going to fall apart because you don't have a vision.
Right.
It's not. Now, 30 years from now, right, that might be a different story, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so of course it doesn't feel urgent where getting the invoice out or cleaning up your whatever does feel urgent. But at the same time, I always go back to one of my favorite quotes is by this guy named Bill Caskey. He's like a sales guru. And he has a podcast called the Advanced Selling Podcast. And some of the early episodes are awesome. So anyway, he says, essentially, if you don't invest time up front in the vision, how do you know you're doing the right things on a daily basis or utilizing your assets in the right place? So just know that we all have a to-do list and ask yourself, is my to-do list actually getting me closer to where I want to go? Or is it just doing? It may totally be getting you where you want to go, but how do we really know if we don't know where we're ultimately? So first, it's to really get to a place where you have to truly be in a spot where you're ready to vision, and you might not be, and that is absolutely okay. Second thing is, if you're not ready for a long-term vision, know that you can always lean into a daily vision. You can always write, I'm getting into bed and. Now, what I want you guys listening to remember, and I'm going to be putting up soon, but I have a whole session on it, like a recorded session that I'm going to start getting out there. That'll just be a free resource for people that takes people through that process and gives them the exercises and takes them through. So that will be available soon. Again, totally open and free to anybody. But it's the idea of kind of thinking your vision for the day isn't just a laundry list of what you did. I'm getting into bed and I did this throughout the day. Not interested in that. I'm getting into bed and I feel, right? Today I was able to actually let go of some of the things that I've been carrying that have just been totally holding me back, or whatever it is. Know that you can always do that short-term vision. It doesn't have to be this like, oh my God, are you kidding? A weekend? I'm in quarantine. Look at my family. I couldn't get a weekend if I wanted to myself. So that's the first thing. Are you in a place to do it? And know that it is 1000% okay if you're not there yet. And you can always lean into a shorter term vision. When you get to the point where you are ready for that longer term vision, I have certain visionaries who want to go through the process. Are you that kind of person who are all in and you just want to, if you're going to do it, you want to get in the zone and freaking do it and be done? Well, that's me. Or are you the person who wants to marinate and process and do a little bit at a time? So you got to kind of know what your style is for that kind of deep work. Once you know your style, then find a process, find one out there that you don't have to. I don't want you to spend your energy trying to create a visioning process. I want you to spend your energy on the visioning work itself. So whatever it is out there, find a process for yourself and then just trust that process. Just trust the process. Just let things come to the surface. If you're like me, and again, you are going to sequester yourself, make sure people know, like, I'm doing this weekend. Like, tell your friends, tell your family, like, I am completely unplugged. Get your very favorite snacks, get your very favorite outfit, and really be open to being really honest with yourself. So get the Kleenex out. That's an important part. Chocolate is also a very important part of visioning mind. So that's that. Are you at that place where you're ready? If you are, find a process. Then third piece is you're going to want to understand your style. Do you want to do it all in one shot, or do you want to do a little bit at a time? Once you understand that style, trust the process and work towards it. And of course, if there's anybody that you can connect with who can help you stay along that path, because it is really easy to do fits and starts and stops and starts, right? Then somebody to just be able to help guide you through that process and make sure that you are getting where you want to go. But at the end of the day, anyone listening to this, know that right now in this moment, you have the tool of daily visioning in your pocket. You can always take the back of a receipt or a scratch sheet of paper out and say, I'm getting into bed and I feel blank. I want you to make sure that vision is inspiring. I want to make sure that vision feels like it's not a fantasy. I always tell people, I'll help you write a vision. I'm not going to help you write a fantasy. So I want that vision for the day to feel like it's something that you can actually get to and you feel connected to. It doesn't have to be rainbows and butterflies at all. We want that vision to be something that, again, you feel connected to in terms of, it's not about the how, it's really the evidence of you getting to where you wanted to go. And that vision is all about you. It's not about pinning your definition of success to, oh, my partner was in a great mood today. We have no idea how your partner's going to feel today. It's how you showed up in that conversation, right? So know that if nothing else, you have that tool, and that tool is also going to help you build your visioning muscles. If you build those visioning muscles, you're going to be like, oh, I could do a longer term vision. I could do a 90-day, right? And then maybe you're like, I could do a 5-year. So just know that there are, again, you always, vision is like that accordion, right? Once you build those muscles, you can use them in any way that you want. But at the end of the day, it is so true. When I was locking myself in the room, for this most recent vision, I had a million business things that I had to do. And I literally said, I don't want to take one more single step. I don't want to send one more email. I don't want to do one more thing until I clarify this vision, because how do I know that that's an alignment? Like, I could be doing a million activities, but it's like, I'm going to spend my energy doing something over the next day. All those things could be shots in the dark that may or may not align, or I could spend that 8 hours really digging in, and then every day after that, knowing that what I'm doing is in alignment. Now, is everything I'm going to do after I have my vision in place perfect or right? Or no, of course, I'm a human. That's not the point. But I'm going to at least know that everything I'm doing is in alignment.
I would venture to say, even though, like as Erin said in our course, we talk about the value of, well, not the value, but you need to be, it's one of the first conversations you should have with your client is their vision for health, right? And what that really looks like, what that feels like, what that smells like, what are you doing? And I would venture to say, as a coach, if you haven't gone through this exercise yourself, you're really going to have a hard time making that an authentic exercise and being able to connect with the client and know what they're going through. So I would strongly recommend to people listening that you certainly, maybe it's starting with the daily exercise, but here's the thing, this whole notion around dissatisfaction and are you dissatisfied enough to make these actions work? I would venture to say, and this probably holds true for your clients, none of my clients would ever have come to me if they weren't dissatisfied enough with something else. Because sorry, I don't take insurance. And it costs money. Okay. So they're going to have to be dissatisfied enough with something to finally take that step and invest in something that, quite frankly, feels really uncomfortable and is unknown, right? Health coaching is kind of an unknown thing. A lot of people don't really know what it is. There's no one definition, but so if you want somebody who's been unsuccessful trying to accomplish their goals on their own to come to you and pay you, if you feel as though you can't create this vision and do your own thing for yourself, you got to kind of put your money where your mouth is a little bit and work with someone like you or somebody that you trust that can help you down this path as well. If you are dissatisfied enough in your own practice, your own abilities as a coach, it's finding the right partner, support system, or resources that's going to help you get there as well. You need to be authentic in your own journey if you're going to show up and be authentic for your clients and be able to demand that authenticity from them.
Right. And to let them know that like you're on the path, like you're on that too, you're working towards your own vision of health, because if you're a health coach, like exactly what, and again, what is that definition of success, or what is that vision of health for at a specific point in the future? Is that just I want to be like this always and forever? Or is it like, I'm interested in, okay, well, if it's a 6-month engagement, what's that 6 month? And it sounds like that's what you guys teach with your clients. And so for you as a health coach, you might be thinking, because maybe you've always been healthy, or maybe you weren't and now you are, but it might feel like this, like, oh, my vision of health is just always to be healthy and eating well and sleeping well. But I'm interested in, well, what is that? Like a year from today, or 6 months from today, or 5 years from today, or whatever, like, what does that look like? Because we all go through different ages and stages, and you can recalibrate, right? Because later in your life, it might look different. But I'm so glad that you just brought that up. And again, I know it can feel overwhelming, but at the end of the day, maybe this idea of daily visioning resonates with you. Maybe you're thinking like, are you kidding? One more thing for my day. If you're that kind of person who just wants to sit down and just like, just do it. Again, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, how did you get where you are? Where are you now? Where are you going? So if you're listening to this and this is something that you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. Like I can do this today. I can do this tomorrow. Amazing. Just remember that those foundational steps are so critical. Give yourself time to think about your own personal trajectory from how you got to where you are. Then really get that true lens on your current reality. Be really honest with yourself. What's in alignment? What's not? No judgment, no right or wrong, good or bad. It just is. really take stock of where you are now, and then think about those non-negotiables, and then tee yourself up and write that first draft of your vision. And, then go back and you'll edit it. But I always talk about this idea that we need to seal our vision. Once you've gone through that editing process, and I've had visions where I haven't edited one word. It was messy and sloppy and the grammar was terrible. And I was like a journalism major. Like, I have no excuse, but it was all over the place. It was such an amazing vision. It didn't need to be perfect. So if you're listening to this, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be all fancy and flowery in the language. Don't worry about any of that. Get your thoughts onto paper. If after your first draft, you feel like there's so much more, this is just the tip of the iceberg, great, do another draft. I am giving you 1 week to seal that vision, finalize it, go from a Word document to a PDF. So for me personally, I do not change a word in my vision for the life of the vision. So for 5 years, my first vision, I did not change a word of the vision. For this current vision, I am not changing a word of this vision. Now, are a million things changing? Absolutely. Do I think like, oh, is that part of my vision still as relevant anymore? That's a great thing to think about, but I'm not going to go back and sanitize the vision to match up with my current circumstances, right? So know that your vision, the editing piece, could be a never-ending story. And I promise you, if you're in editing mode, you're not in doing mode. I promise you. Even if you say you are not mentally there. So give yourself 1 week. It starts today. You've got 1 week to just get it down on paper, and then, do your editing, any editing that you might want to do. And then it is sealed. It is that vision. You're working backwards, creating the roadmap to get there. So absolutely, if you are seeking a way to do this, there are so many opportunities and so many ways and so many mentors out there and so many processes and so many different things that you can access. But no, if you're feeling like that's not accessible to you right now, that if you do nothing but how you got where you are now, where you're going, and then seal that vision and work backwards, figure out how to get there, that's incredible. Like I want you to know that you have that tool listening no matter what.
Wow.
Awesome.
We got to get to work on our visions, people.
We do.
Let's go.
I'm ready. Awesome. Lois, thank you so much. This has been super fun for me. And what a sort of engaging reminder about what we do as coaches and how valuable it is. And it isn't just about telling people how much protein they should eat and whether they can or can't have ice cream tonight or how many push-ups they should be doing every day. That's not coaching. Right. It's a tool, but it's not coaching. This is coaching. So thank you so much for reminding us of that.
Thank you guys. It was a blast. I had so much fun with you guys today, and I hope it was helpful. And like I said, I'm always working on creating some more free, just resources that anyone can access. And so as I do that, if people are interested in like, okay, well, cool, I need more tools, that I'm just always working on creating more things for people that they can access and they can use right away, no matter where they are on their path.
Yeah. Where can they get those tools?
Yes. Awesome. Oh, where can you get them? I said, we're going to get them. I was like, great. Yeah. So truenorthvisionaries.com/info there's a tool called what I call the Decision Makers Matrix. That one is really about sort of how to make sure that you're doing the right work at the right time. The other place to go if you're looking for more of that community and more of a touch point is I have a totally free Facebook group called the Visionary Decision Maker. And that again brings us back to this idea that yes, a vision, we want it to inspire us and motivate us, but at the end of the day, if it's not helping you make better decisions faster, it's not serving you as well as it could. So that Visionary Decision Maker group is all about that. And that I'm in there every day doing a live about my own visionary journey and kind of sharing lessons and then teaching strategies and tips. And then we've got visionaries in there who are working on their own vision at totally different parts in their journey, people asking questions, and then I'm answering them. And so that's another place where if you're like, okay, cool, but what? That's a place where you can literally be like, hey, Lois, I heard this and I have 8 million questions and here they are. And I will literally make a video and answer every single one of them. So that would be the other place I would recommend is like, you and I listening, we can totally connect in there, and you'll be surrounded by a group of visionaries from all around the world who some of them have started visioning. Some of them are in their second vision. Some of them haven't even begun. And they're just like you said, just kind of like visioning curious, right? So you'll be in good company wherever you are.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I so appreciate being a part of this. I had a blast with you too. And, I hope for people out there, this has sparked some different ideas and thoughts, but the most important thing that I hope it sparked is at the end of the day, remembering that this is about your definition of success, not anyone else's, right? That's right. The most important thing, especially in this wild, wild world. So if nothing else, take that away. And there's just so much out there for you to access and be able to keep moving along on this journey.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks so much, Lois.
Thank you. Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've been listening at Health Coach Radio, you'll know that we're all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches, but most importantly, helping to further legitimize this exploding industry. Erin and I have disclosed often that we're on the faculty of the Primal Health Coach Institute, founded by none other than the health and wellness legend Mark Sisson. And we've interviewed dozens of guests from just about every different health coaching program you can think of, and who practice in just about any conceivable way you can think of. But our allegiance is to the health coaching industry in its totality, first and foremost. It's our desire to continuously and unapologetically lift and promote this industry that nudged us to create this podcast for you in the first place. It's this same yearning that encouraged us to take the educational offering at our health coaching school to the next level. We are so proud to offer the Primal Health Coach Level 2 certification course, which, when combined with our primary course, the Primal Health Coach certification course, not only satisfies the educational requirements to sit for the board exam, but is specifically designed to teach advanced coaching mastery. You will work closely with a small class of peers through this 12-week, very intensive, live online classroom experience to learn how to execute a coaching relationship that is truly transformational. You'll learn and practice how to ask powerful questions, what it means to hold space for your clients, but most importantly, how to actually do it. You'll learn about the craft of motivational interviewing and the nuances of habit change, goal setting, and accountability, and how to nurture your client's own inner knowing, their intuition, and their own self-efficacy, so that they will graduate from your care a truly transformed person. You want a big, successful, powerful coaching practice. And maybe you're devouring our episodes looking for the silver bullet that's going to launch your business into the upper echelons. We've said it a million times and we'll say it again. Your coaching skills are what will make or break you and set you apart for success in this field. So if you're looking to level up your coaching skills, and maybe dial up your credential and become a board-eligible health coach, look no further. You can learn more about PHCI's Level 2 program at primalhealthcoach.com/level 2. But if you would value talking to a real person about your path to being a masterful coach and perhaps a board-certified coach, book some time with me personally. You can access my calendar at primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or just call me. You can reach me at 844-307-7662. Thank you for listening to Health Coach Radio, and I hope I get to talk to you soon.